Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, February 20th. LA Galaxy 5 days away from opening their season against LAFC at the Rose Bowl. Cold, windy, rainy. Should be perfect Southern California weather for a little bit of soccer. Galaxy close up their preseason with a win over Toronto. Talk about that. Official signing of Tyler Boyd. Talk about that. Julian Araujo on his way or in Barcelona now. Talk about that. The jersey unveiling event. Going to talk about that as well. Rumors. There's a lot of them. Some of them are pretty much confirmed. Some of them are not, but they're heating up a little bit. To help me do that, he's back. He was on airport duty last week, but we've got him in the studio this time, or at least in his studio. It's Kevin, the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, buddy?
I thought this was going to be theater talk.
Yeah. That's what you were in for my whenever I get old and I retire and I want to do another podcast. Whenever I'm not doing the train podcast, I'm going to do the theater podcast. Is that what you're in?
I'm a culture vulture now.
Obviously. I know you went to the theater last night, so I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did.
That's good. How was picking up Mrs. Panda at the airport? Was it LAX? Did you have to go to LAX?
No, It was Burbank Airport.
Okay. You can stay married then, because if she asked you to pick her up at LAX, I'm always like, it's probably better just to get divorced.
No, it's so much better. Burbank is such a great underrated airport. Although she flew Southwest and they still use the old 1950 styles outdoor luggage carousels, which was always fun. That's
the charm. That's the charm of Burbank and Long Beach. You get to sort of do that and have that. You get to walk down the plane off the stairs. You know, you don't have to go. You don't go through the cushy terminal or anything like that.
Well, you know, if anyone out there is a friend of Family Guy like I am, I love Family Guy. The airport, whenever they draw an airport, it's always Burbank.
That's good. I like that. Very good. All right. Well, I should point out, horrible allergy attack. The fact I'm not sneezing right now, minor miracle. I'm sure I will at some point during this podcast. So if I look like I've been beaten up, I've been sneezing for about 5 or 6 hours. I appreciate. By the way, feel fine otherwise. Just watery eyes.
You think you're allergic to the beginning of the MLS regular season?
I must be. I should tell everybody now. I'm going to be out of town, so I'm not going to be here for that game.
Boycott.
No. I'm going to see my oldest in Colorado, and unfortunate timing. And I think this is the first time I've missed a season opener in 15 years. I mean, I usually get them. And so this is just unfortunate, and that's the way it is. And I'll watch it on Apple TV, which we got a little preview of, and we'll talk a little bit about coming up. But yeah, I now knowing the weather that's coming as well, I'm pretty sure I don't need to. I didn't have to go. Now I'm feeling better about not going.
Are we going to talk about the weather now, or do I have to be quiet about that until later? Because you always yell at me for giving stuff away. You
do ruin things, but I'll bring the weather up right now. Let's talk about it.
Well, I got a call this morning from someone at MLS headquarters in New York, and they called me this morning and said, are those weather reports true? Is that really going to be the weather? Is that really going to happen? I go, 80% chance of rain Saturday is what I'm hearing.
Right.
I didn't know about the cold, 38 degrees at night. Now, I don't know what hour that night is, but the game starts at 6:30.
That's the low. So usually that's around like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So that's usually when the low is. But
I think we can safely say mid 40s at the highest, probably, right?
Yeah, you're looking at a high of 50 and a low of 38 going from Saturday to Saturday night. It's supposed to start raining. In fact, I got a notification, my computer talkie thingy there, we won't say her name, She warned me right before this podcast and said, hey, there's a chance that it's going to rain tomorrow. Even down here. Now, that's tomorrow. And then it's supposed to Wednesday, it's supposed to pick up a little bit. Then Thursday, there's supposed to be more. Basically, you're getting weather Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday right now as it stands. But this all changes. I
mean, I have to say, out here in the corner of the galaxy, Northern California studios here in Valencia, I look at my weather thing on my phone all the time, and it's going to rain, and then it never does. Or it's going to be sunny and it rains. So, I mean, I think take that weather report with a grain of salt. We're still 5-6 days away, but it doesn't look good. And I saw some weather reports from around the country. Apparently, there's a mega storm that's just going to cross the country this weekend. And so the opening weekend of MLS with the big Apple TV rollout, looks like it's going to be horrendous.
It's going to be wet. It's going to be wet. It's going to be cold. There's probably going to be some wind.
You're going to get stuck in Colorado.
No, actually, it's supposed to be nice in Colorado while I'm there. So we'll see if that changes. But right now, it's supposed to be way nicer than here. I'm going to be in the sun.
You're going to have to ski out of the blizzard.
I've gotten trapped there before, so it wouldn't surprise me. Big shout out, $28 super chat from Mr. Herb. I got to meet Herb, Kevin. I met Herb. Herb. As the only co-host who doesn't bring up the chat, so that way you can see what's going on, which is good, by the way, because if you had to pay attention to the chat and do the show, you would be done. It'd be toast.
Yep.
But Herb anyway gave us a $28 super chat. He says, "Hey Josh, hey Kevin, just stopping by to say it was a pleasure meeting you." He meant me, not you, because he didn't meet you. Thanks for taking a minute to say hi and take a picture. Have a great show. I am going to admit to something right now that everybody needs to know about me.
It wasn't really you?
No, it wasn't me. Yeah, it was my body double. I have a stunt double that goes. I have horrible hearing, and it's probably for 15 years of podcasts and putting things in my ears that are way too loud than they're supposed to be. I talked to the doctor. He says I actually have very narrow ear canals as well, which probably doesn't help my hearing. But I had good hearing, and now I don't have as good as hearing. And so it's really hard. So when Herb first said that he was Herb, I didn't realize that it was him. So Herb, if I seem like I didn't quite connect there, it took me a good long time to figure out that I was talking to the man, the myth, the legend, because I would have just given you my children right there, because you basically, rolled out this whole podcast. You're the executive producer, Herb, over here. So I appreciated meeting you. I got to say so many people at the event. We'll talk about that. And it's so nice to be able to reach out and say hi to people and do that. So, thank you, Herb. Appreciate it. You're very, very, very much appreciated here, and it was good to see you in person as well. So, before we get into too much, and I know we all want to listen to Kevin suck on his cough drop or whatever. What do you have?
Yeah, I'm trying not. One of us has to be healthy for this thing, and if you're going to sneeze your way through it, I had to take a throat lozenge because I've been coughing.
I mean, so far, I'm the one who's handling it better. I
yes,
think.
You are.
Okay, just checking.
Well, you got the glass of vodka there too.
Yeah, water, vodka, either way. Just a reminder, 3 shirts out right now, cornerofthegalaxy.com shop. We have the Bishop out. I'm not saying it's a Day on Joveljic shirt, because I wouldn't say that.
But you're not saying it's not.
I'm not saying it's not a Day on Joveljic shirt either, right? So it's one of those. So if you were wondering where the Bishop came from, I'm hoping that with a little explainer, people will suddenly be like, "Oh, I get it." Because sometimes I think that maybe Kevin, you and me and people, we just get these inside jokes and then nobody else ever gets them. But that's one to sort of pay attention to. So anyway. That one is out there, so look for that. The other thing I would say is that we also have the 1,000 shows shirt out, so 1,000 shows, and then we celebrating our 1,000th show, and then we have the designated player shirt out there, and basically we are going with a theme of, and I have many of these lined up and ready to go, we are going with the theme of, we are going to explain MLS rules, whether they like it or not, to everybody around there. And yes, it's ironic that you wear rules on your shirt, but you're also educating and making fun of at the same time, Kevin. It's really a nice mixed bag for everything.
Well, if you wanted to explain the whole salary structure, you'd probably need an entire wardrobe.
I was talking to the Hammer, and I was like, "Hey," he's like, "We'll put some more on there." I have a general allocation one. I have a U22 one, and I have a the buyout clause, right? I have those all set and sort of ready to go as well. The hysterical thing is you have to trim these down so much because they're so convoluted. And Hammer's like, just make the text really, really small. I'm like, yeah, but then it's going to be harder to read. He goes, it's funnier if you can't read it because the text is so small. I'm like, there's something to that.
Well, there's a lot of whereas the party of the first part is the party of the second part and all that legal stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. By the way, we're selling those shirts until MLS decides to shut us down because I'm pretty sure all that stuff is probably theirs. They came up with the crazy rules. I figured it would be a good way to educate people and do stuff. So those are the 3 shirts we have out there, $25 each. You can go on our shop, cornerofthegalaxy.com, click the shop button, and be there. Kevin, are you amazed?
Yes.
Were you shocked to learn that Julian Araujo had been transferred to Barcelona?
Yes and no. I mean, Greg kept saying it was going to happen. It just, this thing got to be so wacky. One of the things I mused about in the newsletter last week was, would it be possible for Julian Araujo, because he was going to Barcelona but needed to be loaned to a place to play, and so many of the top leagues in the world, the transfer window is closed. MLS is not closed. And I mused over the possibility, would it be possible for Julian Araujo to be loaned back to an MLS team and play against the Galaxy?
Yes.
And the Galaxy have his rights. So that would be a very hard.
They don't. They transferred him. So they don't have his rights anymore. He can technically come back to any team.
But that just seemed like such a convoluted possibility. But the way everything was going, I thought it might happen.
Yeah,
maybe it still will.
I mean, it could. Barcelona eventually, and according to Greg Vanny, Barcelona eventually agreed that basically they said, hey, you need to, we need to have him. And so it makes sense for us just to complete the transfer. And I'm sure there were some legal wranglings here, because it certainly seemed like the LA Galaxy, and every time Greg Vanny talked, Kevin, was like, hey, the transfer was not contingent on registration, right? And he said that a couple times. And it almost seemed like there was maybe some legal stuff with Barcelona saying, well, we couldn't register him, so we're not going to pay you the money. And it's like, no. That's not how that works. Well, I don't have any confirmation of that, but just the way that the Galaxy stayed very quiet and just stayed sort of to the quote unquote facts of the deal leads me to believe that there was something going on there where Barcelona was like, well, we'll give them back to you, and then in 6 months we'll do the same deal. Like, it was like one of those perhaps, and the Galaxy are like, no, we made the deal. It's over with now. Done. We have to move on.
The reason I think all that happened, and I don't want to, again, tease something that you want to talk about later, but Greg kept saying that he wanted to replace Julian with another U22 player, wanted to use the same mechanism, and there was a number of things that had to happen, and Julian staying with the Galaxy or even being in limbo would have blown all that up. Now we know that the Galaxy have been deep in negotiations with a U22 player who would come in to play right back, and to me, when I found that out, that explained why Greg was so focused on getting this deal done, because the longer Araujo remained in limbo, the longer these other deals that Greg had in the works remained in limbo. And Greg needed to get Araujo out of the way. Not that he didn't want him or didn't value him, but he was going anyways. He had to go now, like right away, because for this other deal to work and get this other player in before the season's half over.
Yeah, it's you see that, and there was sort of the Galaxy couldn't wait, because if it needed to happen, it needed to happen now. We talk about the summer transfer ban all the time, but realistically, they have to do that right now if they're going to do it. They can't afford to wait. That's why the loan back wasn't going to work. It makes things complicated with MLS rules, and how would that actually work, and how would he fit into the team? And so I imagine the Galaxy were like, no, we're not getting involved in that. That's not something that we want to really take a look at or take a shot at here, because it starts to be too difficult for us to bring somebody in, because if they're going after somebody, they're going to want to bring somebody in who's going to be the starter, right? By the way, Kelvin Leerdam has not been the worst defender on the LA Galaxy back line. There's been 2 unfortunately porous players who have been playing on the back line. It hasn't been Kelvin Leerdam, but Kelvin Leerdam's not your long-term solution. There has to be somebody else there. And so we'll talk about that rumor as it sort of comes up and as we go. But Julian Araujo got to eventually get the send-off that he deserved, finally. Lots of thank yous and lots of posts about things. I'm going to tell you one thing. Kevin, you were there for it. So let's talk a little bit about Julian Araujo and his rise from the kid we talked to in the parking lot outside of Dignity Health Sports Park. Do you remember? So you were going to do a story on Julian Araujo, and you wanted to talk to his mom and his dad too, right?
Right.
And you told me, you're like, hey, do you want to tag along? Right. The whole day, because remember, you didn't you like forget your recorder or something like that, and so you wanted me to record it.
That might have been it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and I was like, well, I'll go. I don't care. I haven't met the kid. It sounds like fun. So we're out in lot 13, and we go and we run into his parents, right? I think we ran into his parents first, and talked to his mom and a little bit, and then Julian came out. The Julian that we talked to was the shy kid, didn't really have a voice. I mean, what were your initial impressions of him?
Yeah, well, if you remember, we had him on the show a couple times too, and he was brutal. I mean, he was a nice guy and everything, but really all he did was agree. Are you glad to be with the Galaxy? Yeah, I'm really glad. How do you feel? I feel good. It's like nothing. There was nothing there. It was a terrible interview.
Yeah.
And then we talked to him like 9 months later. Remember, I think he was at a driving range or something. Totally different guy. He just matured overnight. But the thing about Julian, if you remember at the beginning, there was an incredible backstory. There was a kid that Julian grew up with, his best childhood friend, a guy that got him into soccer and played with him all the time. Julian was on his way. Barcelona seems to be I don't know,
like a thread.
Spooky,
yeah.
Well, no, a thread, but also a haunted place for Julian, because when he was going to Barcelona the first time as a kid to go to La Masia as a prospect, he wound up in the Barcelona Academy in Arizona. Everyone knows that, but I don't know how many people know that he went to Barcelona for a week when he was, 14, 15. Anyway, as he's getting on the plane, he gets a call. His best friend has been shot dead. And Julian turns around, he wants to get off the plane. And some of the Barcelona people and some of his friends said, no, you have to go. Your friend would want you to go. Your friend got you this opportunity by training you how to play. He wants you to go to Barcelona. So Julian cried the entire flight, 15 hours, cried all the way to Barcelona on the plane, got off, and then kind of dedicated his career to this friend. And then right before Julian made his debut with the Galaxy, his dad had a heart attack, and his dad was a truck driver and couldn't drive the truck anymore because of the heart attack. His mom works at the school district in Lompoc. And when Julian was making his first appearances, they would come up from Lompoc with sometimes 200 people in a carpool and come up to watch him play. And then you think about 2 years ago at the end of the COVID thing, when we were starting to come out of COVID, Julian held this major fundraiser with the United Farm Workers. Both of his parents worked in the fields, and so did, I think, his uncle. And he held a major event where they gave out food and school supplies and other things for the families of farm workers. I mean, Julian didn't forget where he came from.
Yeah, it certainly didn't seem to, but I always just try to juxtapose that with the guy who got to say goodbye to Galaxy fans. I don't know if you watched it, Kevin. I'm sure most of the people here have watched it, and I watched it about, 20 or 30 times. I couldn't be rooting for the kid more, especially now that he's at Barcelona. I always talk about how I like Galaxy players to succeed. This is one of those kids you want to see succeed. He's got everything. But his goodbye, this video here, where he starts with, oh my God, my G's. I never thought I'd have to make a video like this, right? The whole deal. It was so perfectly him, and so many of these often seem contrived, right, Kevin? We see that maybe they seem like somebody wrote it for him. If Julian Araujo is reading this, or if it took him 23 times to get it correctly, I don't care how it happened. It comes across as the most genuine, most heartfelt thank you for being with me during my career that you could possibly ever get. And matter of fact, if I do this another 15 years, I don't think I'm going to see that level of humility, honesty, down-to-earthness, right? He's just one of the guys, and he's thanking the fans. He's thanking them for being there, and he means it. And if he doesn't mean it, then he needs to come back to Hollywood and be an actor. Because if you watch that, if you look at that kid in the eyes when he is doing that video, you can tell there's a part of him that he's leaving. I said so many LA Galaxy players sort of fly through the airspace here, Kevin, right? Like you get guys in and they're like, yeah, I love the LA Galaxy, blah, 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 the whole deal. They say all the right things. They do all the right things. They're that thing, but they just sort of transit the airspace. They never get themselves planted. And for Julian Araujo, for guys like him, for guys like AJ De La Garza, right? There's this plantedness, this connection to not just the LA Galaxy, not just the fans, but to everything around them. And to me, that's Julian Araujo. Super excited kid.
The humbleness reminded me a lot of Zlatan.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
the other thing about this too, and this is not so much an indictment of the Galaxy or even MLS, although there's this perception that MLS is, well, it's not La Liga. So he's now, although he'll be playing for Barcelona too, he's training with a La Liga team. I think this is going to be a big, big boost to his national team career with Mexico, with the new coach, and then Julian in new surroundings where they can't use that knee-jerk reaction. Well, he's an MLS, can't be a good player. I think this is going to do wonders for his national team career. I expect him to get called up a couple times this year.
Yeah, it's fun. It's going to be fun to watch him. It's going to be fun to see if he can.
And who his coach is there? Just Rafa Marquez.
Rafa Marquez, one of the best defenders in Mexican history, right?
You don't think Rafa Marquez is calling up the federation saying, "Hey, get my boy back
Right.
there, call him up, take a look at this guy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he's sort of a great guy to go and work with too, right? And he understands defenders. I mean, that's kind of fun. Defenders always make the best coaches, as far as I'm concerned. I was also a defender. I can understand that.
Well, we've actually talked about that, and I've actually talked to coaches and players. It's like in baseball, catchers always make the best managers. Why? Because they see the entire field. They're calling pitches. They're working with the pitchers. They're the only player on the field that works closely with the pitcher. In soccer, it's the same thing. Goalkeepers and defenders, and sometimes holding midfielders, they're the guys with the field in front of them. They're the guys who have to work strategy. So many strikers play with their back to the ball most of the game, and don't see what their teammates are doing. I think that's why defenders, Bruce Arena was a goalkeeper. Bob Bradley was a defender, and defensive midfielder. So many of those guys. Greg Vanny was a defender. So many of those guys played defensive positions in their playing career.
Yeah, Jesus, by the way, in the chat room says Rafa already stated he didn't want Julian Araujo. He's not a Julian Araujo fan. I don't believe that for a second. It is. Listen, the politics over at Barcelona right now are so ridiculous. I mean, they got caught cheating. So Julian Araujo went from one team that got cheating to another team that possibly got cheating with their paying off of the refs. Have you seen any of that? I've been following it on the periphery. I was like, oh, it's gonna get better. Here it comes.
Well, Rafa may have been quoted as saying that, or misquoted even. Maybe that's out there. I don't doubt that. But once Julian is there, you have a Mexican national team player as the coach and a Mexican national team prospect as his player. It just it furthers Rafa's career in a lot of different ways. If his compadre goes back and plays for Mexico just as he did. So whether Rafa Marquez had some legitimate doubts, I think once he realizes the upside to getting one of his players playing on the Mexican national team, I think he's going to be all in.
It's good. I'm super interested to watch how Julian Araujo progresses there or doesn't progress, right? I said in his thing, I said maybe Julian Araujo will be back in 10 years, right? Where he'll have played a successful European career. He will have gone and done the things, and he comes back at 31, 32 years old and comes in and once again, comes back to MLS to finish up his career. And, you couldn't count out the LA Galaxy from being that team if indeed it's something like that. Or Julian Araujo could be back in 36 months, right? It could be that quick. Maybe it doesn't work out in Europe, and maybe he comes back. Bottom line is the Galaxy got him to where he wanted to go, and that means the bridge hasn't been burned there, and that he can come back, right? I mean, that's what you see.
And that's why you make that speech like that. That's why you make. But we've seen other prospects. I don't want to equate the two, but when Julianez went to Europe from the Galaxy Academy, people talked about how good he was supposed to be, and he got U.S. national team call up. I think he scored a goal in his debut. He's just sort of disappeared. We've had some other players that have gone over there and just sort of disappeared. The European game seemed to be too big for them. The moment was too big for them. I don't see that happening with Julian. Not only does he have the experience, a two-time MLS All-Star, he's succeeded here at the highest level in this country, but I think despite the humbleness, I think he's also very confident.
Yeah.
I don't think the moment is going to be too big for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So Julian Araujo now gone to Barcelona, which allows the LA Galaxy to replace him. We'll talk about that replacement likely to be coming in. All right, so the next thing was the jersey unveiling, right? The LA Galaxy unveiled this jersey, the one of the worst kept secrets.
So we're going in chronological order here.
I mean, more or less trying to. Okay.
Right,
so they unveil the jersey. I was gonna say worst secret outside of Tyler Boyd signing with the LA Galaxy. Greg Vanny even called that the worst kept secret in all Major League Soccer. But you get the jersey unveiling. This is sort of the continuation of the tech green life here. Whenever you had the community kit. And now you have, the city of Los Angeles flag here. This is the second kit that features, or at least tries to copy or emulate, the city of Los Angeles flag. You remember the black flag, or the black jerseys with the red and the green and the yellow shoulders. And I think there was the underarm sort of came down into either a red or yellow. I can't remember exactly. Lots of people love that kit. I was not a fan of that one. I'm a fairly big fan of this one. Saw it in person, was at the unveiling, saw this kit, liked the details. Obviously, once again, the authentic is so much different in look and feel and things. it's almost a shame because I think it's like $220 now for an authentic Kevin if you get it.
Wow.
If you get it like customized with everything that you want to get. There's some deals out there if you're looking to get it. I understand there's lots of people who aren't going to buy it because they don't want any money to go to the Galaxy. I understand that part about it as well. I really do like this kit. I would have preferred that they not try to do another not navy blue kit. Right, like they've had sort of that community kit, and that was a big deal, and it was a change. Going back to a solid navy blue this time, I think I would have preferred it. Having said that, this is pretty much as good of a hit as you can get. I'm just surprised at the cost, and that's an Adidas thing and everything else that is going on. I'm surprised at the cost, and you know, I'm interested to see. This kit was not as popular as the community kit, not even close. Whether that's the current political situation around the LA Galaxy, or whether that's just that there wasn't that demand. People at the jersey unveiling certainly liked it. I wouldn't say that there are people here who are saying, oh, it's not good. I did see somebody saying that, you know, they didn't need to go with the city of Los Angeles flag because the red sort of throws this off a little bit. And I can kind of see it. Somebody showed what it would look like with the green and the yellow. And it looks really solid, harkens back to the past for the LA Galaxy. But, you know, in this particular case, trying to get that LA street cred on a lot of things. I mean, Kevin, when the community kit came out, you and I were talking. I was like, this thing's going to fly off the shelves. You better be paying attention to this. It's going to be gone real fast. And I was right. And this time I never called you about the kit once.
No. And actually the whole ceremony did not go as well as probably the Galaxy would have hoped. There's supposed to be some meet and greets with players, with season ticket holders, right? And at the unveiling, that didn't happen. The whole ceremony was very short and quick and sweet. Maybe not so sweet.
No, I mean, I was going to get there, which was the next part. I was looking at it, but I wanted to get to me just driving up. Can I talk about me driving up first?
Yeah, I keep forgetting the chronological.
Exactly. I'm trying to keep this very simple for everybody, and that way it sort of goes. I drove up from Orange County. It's a Thursday night at what time? I think the doors opened at 6. I think I got there about 6:15 or 6:20, something like that. So on the freeways, took me about 90 minutes to get there. Not surprising, not too bad. Driving up the freeway, I was surprised on the 5, right between the 5 and the 101 split on the northbound, there was a Klein out sign that was there. And then, of course, whenever I arrived to the theater itself, which, by the way, gorgeous theater, $1 million theater. I think Joe Tutino said 1918 was whenever it was dedicated, which is amazing. I love old theater history whenever it comes to that, and there's so many cool old theaters here. Whenever you just go walking down the street, I've been to a couple of events at some of the other older theaters here. You know, parking was fine. I mean, some people were sort of talking about how you know, they wish the LA Galaxy would have had free parking and that they rented out the parking garage. Parking was right around the corner. It wasn't too bad. Right next to the Manchester Market, right? So there was all these things. I have said, and I have told you, and I called you after this event, the LA Galaxy absolutely 100% nailed the location. I thought the location was cool. I thought the theater was gorgeous and sort of had that old Hollywood feel to it. So whenever you're linking to the LA Galaxy with downtown LA and sort of that old Hollywood feel, that makes a lot of sense to me. Right? There's history there. So you can go there and you could do that. Next to something, it was fun because I was hearing from different people who said that they've been coming to the Manchester Market since they were little kids and they remember going and playing video games there. One of the NAG boys, the News Across the Galaxy guys, was there. We got to talk a little bit. I think it was Edgar. So we got to talk a little bit about that as well. Just sort of the history. So nailed it. 100% location. Loved it.
But I want to push back a little bit, and this is going to be really unpopular, I know, but I'm going to say it anyways. The downtown location, the theater is beautiful. It's an old historic theater, and you can go into it's the symbolism, the importance, all the historic things that have happened at that theater, and along that stretch of Broadway as well. I mean, it's a really historic area. But for the Galaxy to sort of come in and claim that, I mean, the Galaxy played in 2 cities, Pasadena and Carson.
Right.
I understand they're the LA Galaxy, and they want to be Southern California's Galaxy. I understand all that, but they have played in Pasadena, and they essentially then skipped downtown and went to Carson. So you know, I just point that out just to be fair. We didn't miss that. We didn't understand that.
You want to be fair. I understand. But here's the thing. If the LA Galaxy are Southern California, then being in the center of it is fine too. Being in North, if they go into the Valley, that's fine. If they go into the Inland, I mean, I think one of the big arguments against sort of the LAFC heart of the city thing is that, okay, cool. So this is the small section that you're looking for, and the LA Galaxy want to pull from everywhere, and that it's not as limiting. Right.
I wasn't going to go there. I wasn't going to compare them to the other team, but I mean, I think a more probably a fair comparison would be the Lakers and Kings, who played in Inglewood for so many years. The LA Rams and the Chargers playing Inglewood. The Lakers are now downtown, and the Kings are downtown, the Clippers are downtown. The Rams, left the Coliseum, then to Anaheim, to St. Louis. They haven't played downtown in decades, and they're still the LA Rams.
Right.
The Angels tried to become the LA Angels of Anaheim. That never really worked.
That's still horrible. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other teams that play in suburban places, across the country. The Atlanta Braves don't play in Atlanta, for example.
No, I mean there's lots of places like that, but New England Patriots don't play near Boston. They play way out in the middle of nowhere, right? Same thing with the New England Revolution, because they play out of Foxborough, that type of thing. I get that. I just think that you're allowed to put this thing that you want to do, this event, anywhere you want to do. And by the way, I said Manchester, I meant Grand Central Market. They're already correcting me because I'm an idiot. I know where I went.
Where's the Manchester Market?
I'd probably in Manchester. Somewhere in
Grand
England.
Central Market is really cool though.
So a really cool vibe. Love the vibe of the Grand Central Market. By the way, the Galaxy set up a pop-up shop that's sort of out on the street there, so you can see it as you're sort of coming by. And they also have like kits and pressings. That's where I got to see Cosmo, and I got to talk to Cosmo a little bit. And I was in the video if you saw, because we thought I was for sure 100% convinced Cosmo had absolutely crisped this guy's jersey, because you know how you hold down the press and the press sets for a certain amount of time, and then the timer goes off and you're supposed to pull it up. Well, Cosmo couldn't get it up. He couldn't. That's funny. Cosmo couldn't get the press up, and so he was trying and he couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh, it's getting crispy. And one of our listeners was standing next to us, and he knew the podcast, and it was his jersey. And I'm like, oh no. I think Cosmo just crisped your jersey, man, and the whole deal. And it came out, it was fine, right? The whole deal. I told Cosmo, I'm like, I'm pretty sure. I go, you were worried though, weren't you? Just a little bit. You thought you ruined it, right? And that's that video that was sort of there. So, I enjoyed that part of it. There was a complete miss though. And I think, I got to talk to some marketing people. I understand what they were trying to do. The big miss was the stage show. Huge miss. This is a team, the LA Galaxy, who held a jersey event, Kevin, at the Novo, right? And in downtown, at Staples Center at the time, had, I don't know, thousands of fans there, it felt like. Had this big stage show. Zlatan was there. There was lasers and, dried ice and fog and all this cool stuff and cool art and all this stuff around. You walked through that theater and you went in and you sat down. That was the only thing that there was really to do, was go walking through the lobby and sitting down. So I went and I was placed about 2/3 of the way back in that lower orchestra section there, because that's where the press was. So I sat there, and at about 6:30 or so, the event started. Joe Cicino came out. He interviewed Tyler Boyd, who had not been officially announced at the time. So he did that. I thought it was strange they brought somebody out who was not officially announced, but they felt pretty confident of it. Tyler's a good guy. I wouldn't say he's necessarily like energetic and super pumped and really trying to like get everybody. And I think the Hammers told me, he goes, this should have been a pep rally, right? Because you're a little more than a week away from one of the biggest games of the year. You're playing at Pasadena. This should have been the excitement and everything. And it was awkward and it was stumbly. And you know how like whenever you go to talk and then somebody's clapping and it's like, oh, I'm going to stop and let you clap. But then they stop clapping because they want to let you talk, right? It's like a little bit of something like that. It was just awkward. The whole thing was awkward. So Tyler Boyd, yeah.
And I think the Tyler Boyd thing was awkward. He's going to talk to the press, by the way, tomorrow. I think it's his first official, meeting with the press, because he just was officially signed today. But think about the Tyler Boyd thing, and you kind of mentioned it. This is a team with Ricky Puig, with a 4-time World Cup player, and Martin Caceres, with Chicharito, with a guy like Julian Bond, who's so personable and just such a great guy to talk to. All these other guys, they Efrain Alvarez grew up a stone's throw. Literally, he could have walked to his mom's house from the theater. Right. And why not him?
Yeah.
But Tyler Boyd, a guy who's technically not even on the team at that point.
Right.
That just seemed very weird.
It seems like they were trying to go with a theme of like local, right? Because they went with Tyler Boyd, who's Santa Barbara.
Born in New Zealand.
Yeah, but Santa Barbara. He grew up in Santa Barbara, right?
Again, Efrain.
Did they have him? They had him. Okay. I mean, he was there with Jalen Neal. Efrain is, how do I say it nicely? Efrain is not the most explanative whenever it comes to his answers. And so that's not necessarily, again, it's the same energy. If you're going to pick people for this, I think you really have to look at picking people for the right energy. You and I know, almost every reporter knows, all the PR staff knows who the guys you want to talk to. Like, you could have had Raheem Edwards, right? Because that's a guy who knows how to get up, who sort of talks to people, who can get the people excited. Like, Raheem is one of those guys. You could have had somebody like, as you say, Martin, Caceres. He could come in and he could talk a little bit about that stuff.
AJ De La Garza. AJ for a day, right?
Yeah, just bring him in and do the whole thing. So they had that, and then they had Chicharito. They did talk to Chicharito. They got the big guy on there, and that's what they should have done. He kind of had to limp out to the chair, which isn't a great look. And Chicharito is if you want to know about butterflies and rainbows and all the other things, Chicharito's your guy to talk to. And if you want to have sort of, a rah-rah sort of thing, it missed. Every single one missed. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I wonder who they're going to bring out next. At one point, I almost turned to Mike Gray, who was sitting next to me, and was like, so when's this thing going to start? Because it almost feels like these are just sort of like the pre-show, right? It goes, and then they bring the players out in the jerseys, and the kit was launched, right? I was like, oh, okay. So the entire team's up there. Most of them are wearing the jersey. They had the goalkeepers not in the jerseys. They had them in their goalkeeper kits. That's fine. No problems. Looking at the whole thing, watching how it goes. And I was like, okay, cool. I wonder what's next. And then they just left and they walked off the stage. And I was like, oh, well, we were supposed to have interviews afterwards. I'm like, okay, so we'll go up. We were supposed to be invited up to the stage. So we went up to the stage, and it's like 7:00 now. So we started like right around 6:30, a little after 6:35. And we're talking to Ricky Pooch, who talked real quick and sort of maybe we had 3 or 4 minutes with him, and he answered all the questions and the whole deal, but that's fine. And then Jalen Neal, we got to talk to Jalen Neal, which is great. I don't know that, we're still sort of, Jalen is going to be one of my favorite people to follow this year. I really expect some good things from Greg Vanny, sort of, I think, is expecting these good things. Jalen is incredibly poised whenever he talks. He says the right things. He knows how to do it. He adds in the correct flavor to whenever he does things. He's a very good interview for what it is, but he's not a starter. And he's not like the sort of the big name that you would expect at, the jersey unveiling, that you'd want to talk about the jersey and do all this stuff. And then it was done. The worst part about this, though, was, and I had a season ticket member flag me down whenever I was walking through the Grand Central Market, was they were like, that they were supposed to have autographs and pictures with the players. I said, I didn't. They didn't. On my schedule, it didn't show that, so I didn't know. And she goes, no, it's right here. And she showed me the season ticket member email. In fact, she forwarded it to me. So there were all those guys there, and they left. And there was a whole bunch of people who sat in the front row, and they told people, basically, if you're in these rows, these first however many rows, the first 250, I think, season ticket members, you could get photos and autographs. And so they waited there while we did the press, and they waited, and then they say, all right, that concludes our event. And they turned around, and not one guy stopped there to sign autographs or anything like that. Not that I know of. I didn't see one.
Well, here are 3 things. First of all, what you described, it took you longer to drive one way to the event than the event itself.
Yes.
That's never a good thing. 2, I'll bet you $1 million those players never knew that they were supposed to sign autographs, because I can't think of more than a small handful of players in the Galaxy that would turn their back on the fans. They're all pretty much a bunch of really good guys when it comes to the fans and the supporters groups. So don't blame the players. They didn't know.
Yeah, I would suggest that they didn't know. Yes, correct.
And then third, here's the Galaxy. First of all, I don't know if the season ticket holders necessarily asked for it, but they were told you are going to get to meet these players and have autographs and pictures. Come here, sit in these seats, wait afterwards patiently. We will get these players to you. And then they're told the players have left. This happened at a time when your main supporters groups are boycotting you and standing outside your event, calling for your president to be fired. This was a huge opportunity for a makeup call. It was early in the evening. It wasn't like it was midnight. It was 7:00. Those players easily could have come over and spent an hour with the fans, or a half hour, whatever. That would have been an amazing thing for the Galaxy to do at this point in time with their relationship with supporters. This was a huge unforced error on the Galaxy's part, and it feeds the narrative. I'm not going to say that this was their intent,
right?
But if you're the supporters group, that feeds that narrative of they don't really care about the supporters. That's exhibit A right there.
Yeah, and I was talking to some people, and I know that the budget was tight on this. And I don't think you needed to spend a whole bunch of money in order to have that stage show be something. Like it needed to be more than what it was. And it turned awkward. It was awkward. It was cringy. And I know there's people who worked hard, and that's the whole thing. You and I were talking about this, and I was trying to talk about this with some people around the galaxy as well. It's like you can't take all of this criticism personally. Right? I understand how hard people work. And quite honestly, I imagine the budget had a lot to do with sort of what that was and how that was sort of put together. And they tried to do it. The weird thing with the Grand Central Market after you got done, and like it was real lively upstairs, but they were selling the Galaxy kits downstairs. And by the time I got there, there was this downstairs basement area that had, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6 tables that were all around that with people waiting to be sold, waiting to sell the jerseys there. There was nobody there. I saw the jerseys that were sold because a lot of people were getting them personalized there at the market, and I think at one point there was a 90-minute wait basically to get your jersey, personalized, which is a long time. Probably should have had more personalization people there, but maybe they thought maybe people weren't going to get them personalized there. They'd get them personalized at the stadium, however it goes. But it was just, that was the thing. I think they expected a lot more people there, and maybe more people being there makes this a more entertaining event, right? Because with more people, there's more things. I don't know. I can't give you a great estimation on it. I would guess 150 to 250 people is probably. I'm horrible at guessing though. Like I can guess in the stadium. Like try to put me in a group of people, but there weren't that many people sitting behind me, and I was 2/3 of the way in the back from the orchestra level there, and there was nobody up in the balcony.
Well, if budget was a problem, and again, Dignity Health Sports Park is a great venue, and the what used to be the American Express Club, what's called Champions Lounge now, whatever it's called, is a great place to do something like this. They would have had access to the scoreboard. They would have had access to the gift shop. You could have got down and bought other things other than just the jersey. I mean, again, it was a great venue, but if you're telling me part of the reason the event went south was a budget problem, well, then don't spend the money to rent the $1 million theater, which probably cost $1 million, right? Because that's what
I don't know. I know I'm going to get lambasted by some people saying I'm being unfair. I don't think I'm being unfair. I called you after the event and told you exactly what I thought. I talked to Hammer after the event and told him exactly what I thought. This is just the way it came across. The Novo thing was so much fun, and I would tell you how wonderful and great it was. And obviously the budget for that gigantic, right? I mean, whenever you're doing the Novo and all that other stuff. But yeah, that's it. I mean, that's sort of where we're at.
That thing with the fan interaction, that is just at this time in this climate, that is such a horrible, unforced error. I just can't fathom how that was allowed to happen.
I will say that I did not see Greg Vanny there, so if he was there, I didn't see him. I didn't see any members of the coaching staff there. If they were there, I didn't see him. I didn't see any members of the front office, the hierarchy there. If they were there, I didn't see him. They could have been in other places. I just didn't see him. I don't know if anybody else saw him. So that seems weird as well. They were at Coachella the day before. I imagine they came back Wednesday night. But they could have come back Thursday morning, and so maybe people were off doing stuff. But I mean, this is an event they knew about. Just weird. Again, I like the kit. I like the location. I thought it was going to be really cool, and it missed, and that happens. I just don't think the Galaxy can really afford to miss much right now. So
no. You have to play to the room, and right now the room is angry.
Yeah. Julio, by the way, gave us $2 super chat. Says you're not being unfair. I mean, I get that. I will tell you this. I had fans come up to me and talk to me, and they were livid. If the amount of criticism that I'm dishing out right now is tame in comparison to what some of these people said, and remember, I work for a construction company. I know all the bad words. There were a lot of those in there, and I was like, "Woo!" It's a little. That happened on more than 5 occasions where people came up to me and said something. And with the amount of people there, that's not, for me, that's a pretty high representative sample of people who sought me out to talk to me about it. Happy with the kit, liked the kit, went there, was very disappointed with the event. So that's it. I wanted to talk about that and sort of say, that's how it went. And that was my experience. And, they're not all home runs, but I just think that I think it could have been better. I think it needed to be better, and it wasn't. So
was that more like a soft ground ball back to the pitcher?
I mean, it's a strikeout as far as I'm concerned. I don't think any contact was made. Maybe they fouled off a couple before they struck out, but that last swing was a whiff for sure.
Okay.
Let's see. What we also saw then this leads into the game on Saturday, right? So you get the LA Galaxy in a preseason game against Toronto. This is actually supposed to be the good test. This is supposed to be
at the Diggity. Is at the Diggity.
It's at home. I got there was protests out in front, as you would imagine that they would be. Inside, I would say noticeable that the supporters groups weren't there, and it has been noticeable at all of these things, whether you're at Coachella, whether you're at the season ticket member event, and maybe that was what was missing, was that the supporters groups weren't inside, chanting and making the normal noise you expect. Fair criticism, and I think maybe that could even be it. So you saw that. You could feel the difference in the stadium. It's different. Whenever you can hear players, and I know it's preseason, I'm used to seeing very small crowds during preseason. It happens, but there's usually always noise. There's usually always something coming from the supporters groups. You're not seeing that. So it reminds me a lot of some COVID games that we went to, Kevin.
Well, I was just going to say, if you remember COVID, when we would drive into the parking lot, because media were allowed in, there were the supporters outside with the drums and all the musical instruments chanting, and you could hear them from inside the stadium. It was amazing. You could hear the supporters who weren't allowed to see the game, couldn't watch the game, couldn't interact with any of the players, but they were outside on the Cal State Dominguez Hills side of the campus, making noise, and you could hear them. And now all of a sudden we have games, and they're not in where they can come in, and they're not in making that noise.
Yeah, it's and again noticeable, and I think it's going to be. I don't know how noticeable it's going to be at the Rose Bowl whenever it's raining sideways and the wind's blowing, at least right now, and it's cold and wet. But, I think that's going to throw a damper on things. Yeah.
Keep in mind the attendance that will be announced for that game will, again, be MLS policy, tickets distributed. So, again, it's raining sideways and it's 10 degrees. It may not be a lot of people in the park, and then they're going to say, attendance is 80,000. Well, that's tickets distributed.
Well, I mean, that's also going to be the case at Dignity Health Sports Park. Most of the tickets in the supporters groups have already been sold, right? So you're going to see that, some of those they're going to call tickets distributed, and there's going to be nobody there.
But I think everyone who's ever gone to a soccer match will agree that it's not so much the size of the crowd, it's the ambience, it's the noise of the crowd.
Yeah.
And you will notice that they may announce 80,000, there may be 10,000 there, and you're going to notice the ambience. I don't care what the attendance figure is, the ambience wasn't there. And that's what's going to happen if the supporters boycott continues and there's not that noise. There will be people in the stadium, and there will be people who buy tickets and come down and say, that's what Chicharito looks like. And they're not really going to understand what's going on. And there's not going to be the emotion and the ambience in the stadium. There may be people there, but there won't be that emotion. And that will be missed by everybody.
Yeah, so again, something to watch, just observational as we go. Game against Toronto. This was supposed to be the start that you were sort of expecting. Where does the starting lineup sort of sit out? You're looking at no Costa, which is not surprising. They're watching a calf issue with him. There's no Chicharito. He's back to training. They expect that he will be ready for Saturday, but he was missed on the night. Joveljic got the start. Joveljic, when he starts, tends not to do very much, and this is him with the first team lineup and everything else. Ricky Puig was out there, Gaston Brugman was out there, Mark Delgado was there, Memo Rodriguez playing on the left wing. You had right wing in Efrain Alvarez, right? So playing that, you had two inverted wingers cutting a lot inside, so maybe that took some space away from Dejan Joveljic instead of people who are going to stretch it. Tyler Boyd played in the second half. That was good. Your defense, which is the big question everybody's asking. Raheem Edwards. You had Jalen Neal starting next to Chris Mavinga in this particular game, right? And so that was a little change from something that we've seen, and we haven't known whether or not we're going to see Jalen Neal be that guy or not. Greg Vanney said after the game that he's not going to lose any sleep over whether or not Jalen starts, but he means that in that he's not nervous if he starts him. He's calm, he's cool, he's collected. If he starts him, he knows he's ready. And Greg said he was focusing on that. For
all of Jalen Neal's attention as the flavor of the month, and it's well deserved. He had two caps with the U.S. national team. He's never played in MLS. Not a minute. He played in 2 minutes in a U.S. Open Cup game. But Jalen Neal is one of the very few players in history who have made a start and two caps with the national team before he's ever played for his club team.
Yeah, it's one of those things. This is going to be the big test, and I think Greg Vanney very well could start him. I don't think he does, just because of how big the game is going to be, and he's going to want to probably have somebody a little more experienced. But Having said that, the Galaxy are an incomplete team. Greg Vanney admitted as much. So when they go in to play LAFC, they don't have everything exactly set the way that they want it. The right side was Kelvin Leardam, by the way. You had Raheem Edwards on the left side. So I think we got the starting lineup and all of that. I'll say this. Efrain Alvarez continues to impress in this preseason. And Kevin Cabral impressed really good last year in the preseason. Efrain Alvarez had a pretty good preseason as well. But the goal that he scored against Toronto, where he went left and then he went left again, then he went left for the third time to get around the third defender and then cut the ball back against everything and beat the goalkeeper in that far post. I think that's the best goal he's ever scored as an LA Galaxy player. I know there's going to be people who talk about the long shots that he scored against Vancouver and the long shots that he scored against Charlotte last year and some of the more, left-footed rockets that he scores. But in terms of agility, quickness, being able to evade and maneuver, Efrain Alvarez looked like he was the show in an MLS game. I would suggest that Toronto maybe just needs to step out and force him inside a little bit in that particular situation, but it doesn't matter because he put it in. Has had a really good preseason, Kevin. This could be the year. We talked to him afterwards. He says it has to be this year.
Well, it's always, this is going to be the year for him. He's one-footed player, which is a problem because teams are going to figure that out. He goes to his left foot all the time, really doesn't even use his right foot for much. His problem, for a young guy, his problem was I've been to his house and I met his parents, and his mother's an excellent cook. And Efrain will tell you that because he eats his mother's cooking far too much and the horchata and everything else that she makes. That's been his problem. He's always been a kind of a beefy guy. Maybe he always will be. Maradona was too. But Efrain, I think now is caught on to the fact that his physical fitness and his inability, we knew this before, his inability to play 90 minutes. He was always a 50-minute guy. And his inability to really be out on the field was what cost him. And he now, as he told you, has a personal trainer. Uh-huh. He has a dietitian. Yep. He's got away from mama's cooking, which is a real loss for him. But it's going to make his career better. The fact that a guy his age needs a personal trainer and a personal dietitian strikes me as very unusual, that there's just a total lack of personal discipline, I suppose. But whatever, it seems to have made a difference. And we know the Galaxy need a winger. They got one in Tyler Boyd. They're trying to replace two, Grandsir and Cabral. I don't think Memo is that guy, but if they get Boyd on one side and if Efrain can be that guy on the other side, they may be better on the wings than they were last year.
Memo so far has been better than a Grandsir, and he plays differently. So that's something to watch. He cuts inside a lot more, and that's what you had with Memo and Efra, both cutting inside, so a lot of crowded space in there. But Memo has looked really good. Outside of, I would say Efrain is up there in terms of having a great preseason. Memo Rodriguez right now is the best signing the LA Galaxy have made this offseason. Hands down, it's not even close. He seems connected. He seems able to play within the system well. He seems comfortable in what he's being asked to do. Greg likes his versatility in terms of playing on the outside or playing on the inside. That being said, I don't think he's a starter. I think that eventually he will be replaced by somebody, and that he'll be more a depth piece when you look at this. But seeing him right now, unbelievable. You talk about like the different. Jalen on the defense has been the biggest thing. In the midfield, it's been Memo Rodriguez and Efrain Alvarez, and at forward it has been, I would say, a lack of Chicharito and a lot of minutes for Joveljic, but not a lot to show from it. Those are sort of the big deals right now.
When you look at Memo, I was really disappointed, and I wrote this, that they're, for the longest time, Malvinga and Memo were their offseason signings. Two guys that I wrote were released by their teams, not really released. They were allowed to go as free agents. When I wrote released, I meant the teams had the option of dealing with them and bringing them back, and decided not to. So the teams made the decision, these are guys that are expendable for us. Okay, that's what I meant when I said they were released. Having said all that, the thing with Memo is it's one of two things, it seems to me. People always tell me, like, everything will revert to the numbers on the back of your baseball card. That's where you're going to wind up at the end of the season. You're not going to go from being a 250 hitter to hitting 400. It's just not going to happen. You're going to wind up somewhere where the stats are on the back of your baseball card. That's not necessarily a great thing for Memo Rodriguez. His career has been solid, but not anyone. I don't think anything that would get a lot of people excited. However, having said that, a lot of times that depends on the system that you're asked to play and the things you're asked to do. Yep. Maybe Greg Vanney has found the secret. Maybe he's using Memo in a way that he hasn't been used before, and he's allowing this guy to be in a position to succeed. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. He could when you look at his stats, I agree with you. He's a guy that's going to be depth, and the Galaxy going to need depth. They could play as many as 50 games this season. On the other hand, he could step in. We've seen guys like, Malvinga is one.
Movinga. There's no L. Movinga. Yes.
Well, that guy. Guy.
Yeah. The chat room also wants me to tell you that there's no H in horchata. It's horchata. No other things. Otherwise, it gets PG-13.
This is why I write instead of talk.
Right. I know. That's what I was trying. Yeah. I try to explain that, people. You said ambience earlier, and it's ambiance, but that's French, and I don't want French. You. Yeah, I know. I don't want you to get crazy with it.
By the way, at some point we need to talk about what happened to the whole French connection. There's only one guy left from that whole.
They all left.
French connection. Yeah. But the point being, the guys that Vanny brought in from Toronto, he brought them in for a reason. Right. And look at some of those guys did not play well in non-Vanny years, and now they're back with Vanny and they're playing very well.
Yeah.
And so there is something to that. Vanny perhaps knows how to use Memo, saw something that nobody else saw, and maybe he's going to unlock this guy. Maybe he is going to have a great season.
I really like Memo Rodriguez right now. We'll see how he continues. Ricky Puig, by the way, is playing a game that we maybe didn't see as much in the 10 or 12 games that we got to see from him whenever he played, starting from summer basically and finished out the season with the Galaxy. He is still playing the inside game where he can cut and he can move and the passing, but the passing in the midfield has already I think caught up to the level it was at the end of last year, just in terms of the quickness and the darting and the moving. And I think Efrain fits really well into that. I think Memo Rodriguez fits really well into that. But one of the things you're seeing Ricky do a little bit more is take into that David Beckham role a little bit, which is find yourself, drop back a little bit into the space that's being found in that center, right? Because everybody's pressing forward. And so if you can drop back a little bit, there's some space there, and he's turning and he's distributing. And this is going to be the thing that allows Ricky Puig to survive 34-plus games in Major League Soccer. Because when he's inside and when he's interior, and you saw it in this game, he's going to get fouled. They're going to foul him like crazy. They're going to be physical with him. They're going to catch him late. And Ricky's a fiery guy. He's going to get yellow cards and all sorts of things because of this. His body is going to get beat up this year, especially in Major League Soccer, where we like to be really physical, right? So you're going to see that. The thing that is going to save Ricky Puig this year is being able to drop into the back whenever the LA Galaxy are pressing and pressuring forward and being able to distribute from that backside. He had several great switches, great open passes, just also the quickness, the goal that Mark Delgado scored. I think Greg Vanny threw shade at Mark Delgado afterwards. I went back and sort of listened to it, and I'm pretty sure this is what he's saying. There was a free kick, and I think it was a foul on Ricky. Ricky got fouled. And then he played it quickly out to, it was like 35 yards out, played it quickly out to Delgado. Delgado took a touch into space because Toronto hadn't closed it down. From about 30 yards out, Delgado launched a ball, and it went to the back of the net past Sean Johnson, newly acquired by TFC there. Vanny said afterwards, he goes, well, if you know Mark in training, he loves to shoot. And then he sort of let that trail for a second. He goes, I'm just glad this one went in, right? So apparently Mark Delgado shoots a lot in training and none of them go in. So this particular one did. And Vanny says that he does hit a heavy ball. So those were your goals from the Galaxy. The Efrain goal, it was a good team goal. The Delgado goal was a good take. I will say 100% that I thought that Toronto should have had one or two goals as well. They just were not good on the finishing side of things.
Well, they did have one that was called back.
They did. He was offside, so it was the correct call. And they did eventually get one that was well taken. And at that point, the Galaxy had sort of had their low minute guys in, so that made some sense. Things fell apart a little bit in that. The things we learned after the game, though, were important. We asked Greg Vanny about Tyler Boyd, and he said, I think in the next couple of days we have it all solved. We're not concerned that he's going to be ready for the Rose Bowl. They officially announced him today. We'll talk about that here in a second. Uri Rosell, who's, I think, the Spanish defensive midfielder. He's a number 6. We asked, Damian Calhoun asked Vanny about him and said, does he have plans? Do you have plans for him this year? Is he going to be on the team? And Vanny said that he didn't want to give away all his secrets, but that yes, he was going to be on the team. So he had a concussion in the preseason, and so he was out for 10 days. And so now he's back. So expect that he's a depth piece there. Carlos Harvey went away. They're going to get Uri Rosell in there. We don't have any information, but I would imagine that it's a low money deal. And he's coming in to play depth. Last played at Sporting Kansas City, I think, and has a green card from all the information that I have. So wouldn't cost an international spot. So I think that's good depth signing there. Then we asked We asked Greg about some rumors. We'll talk about those rumors here in just a little bit. So the other part about this, and let's get to Andrew's question, because Andrew gave us a $5 super chat forever ago. He said, sorry if you covered this. Did Apple give heads up on the broadcast for this last preseason match? I saw the recap is still up, but no full replay. I was able to watch the full replay like immediately after the game. I was actually amazed. And no, by the way, we didn't get a full confirmation sort of heads up. The LA Galaxy didn't give it to us, and MLS was sort of, I think, being shy about it too, because this was a test, right? They didn't want to be like, hey, we're going to do this, everybody tune in. They were sort of like, we're going to do this, and if you tune in, that's great, and if not, that's okay, because we're still trying to figure this out. So Apple TV was on in full effect, Kevin. We saw it. I was watching it up in the press box, actually, while some of the stuff was going. Depending on your stream, 30 seconds to probably a minute or more delay in terms of the live action versus Apple TV. Not surprising for a streaming service, and all those things. The big deal, there's a couple big deals. People were talking about, obviously the people on the call, Mark Rogandino and Heath Pierce, I think were on the call for this LA Galaxy game. I didn't listen to them because there's a little button that you can click whenever you get this chance, and it says audio options, and you can click it and you can say home radio feed, Kevin. And in this particular case, that was Mr. Joe Totino on the call. Apparently that audio started out really crappy and got much better as it went. So
I'll always pick Joe.
Always pick Joe. Joe's great.
By the way, it's interesting what you say about the time delay, because when LAFC launched and they had YouTube TV as their jersey sponsor, one of the things the team said is, oh, this is going to be great. You can take your mobile device into the stadium and watch the game, watch replays and everything on YouTube TV while the game's going on. And at first that sounded like kind of a cool option, because we have that in the press box. We can watch replays on the TV monitors. And for the fans to be able to do that, that seemed kind of cool. I talked to someone at Apple TV when they had their media day last month up in Cupertino, and I asked about that. I go, is this going to be something that you're going to press? And they said, no, we don't want people in the stadium watching our product on their mobile device. We want them watching the game, going to a live event, talking again about the ambiance of the game as we did earlier. They want you to enjoy the game in person. And I know there's always a delay on mobile devices, streaming devices, but I wonder if that delay has been goosed up a little bit to make it uncomfortable to watch the game on your phone while you're at the stadium, because Apple TV made the point that they don't want anyone doing that.
Yeah, it is. It's something to watch. I think just how it's sort of used and how the fans use it. I was so shocked though, because when the game was over, we were sitting down in the press conference, and I was scrubbing through the game to watch because I like highlights. But highlights are horrible in Major League Soccer because they never show the build-up. They never show what led to a foul or a penalty kick. It's literally, they're dumbing it down to the stupidest person, and it drives me crazy because it has to be 4 minutes long. You can't have any more than 4 minutes. It has to be 4 minutes. I don't care if there were 17 goals scored. You only get 4 minutes, right? So that drives me crazy. So in this, I could go through because I wanted to see the build-up to Efrain's goal. So you could ask a question about it, right? Oh, hey, there were 27 passes in the lead up. Is that how you guys want to play? Yes, obviously, but let's hear it from Greg. Let's hear him sort of talk. So I was amazed that you could scrub through it with your finger, sort of find the goals, do the whole thing. I imagine that's going to be better. I will tell everybody this. I know from talking to some people who are in the industry that the graphics packages you saw are not the final production either. So I know a lot of people are saying, I think Toronto's swatch was like pink instead of red. They were like, here, Toronto, and it was sort of pinkish red. Don't worry about that. The final packages are supposed to be done this week, from what I heard, and get them in and sort of have the full graphics packages. But I think it's going to be a good graphics package. They're not skimping on any of this stuff. So this is full. I don't remember. Does everybody remember when Time Warner took over the LA Galaxy's thing, and like they had a town hall meeting in the studio, and they had all this like bumper programming, right? The stuff before and after, and all this stuff, and it was like, wow, look at how the LA Galaxy and Major League Soccer are being treated like a major league. Well, what happened whenever the viewership wasn't there and they didn't get it? All that stuff went away, right? And so right now you're in the honeymoon period. Apple's going to throw all the content out. They're going to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. I wouldn't be surprised if some of it gets, removed or reduced eventually. But in at least these first couple of years, I would imagine that you're going to see, sort of this beefed up product, this thing that's going to show you all the bells and whistles. And I think they're close on this. Now, major downfall. And somebody was tweeting it out today because somebody asked me about it. I think Mr. Provino was talking about that. he was talking and saying, hey, you can only get the home radio feed, right? And there was a game before New England and Orlando were playing, and it was only the home radio option. So what would happen when the LA Galaxy go on the road? Well, as of right now, and Jeremiah Oshan, who covers the Sounders, does a lot of things in MLS, says basically that the radio feed is only going to be from the home team for right now. And basically they're told that it's a technical issue that requires the feed to be hardwired into the broadcast truck, which allows for it to be perfectly synced, right? Now, that sounds like it's a technical problem, like it's something they could clean out. Joe Tutino, whenever I tweeted out, I go, that means you can't listen to Joe whenever he's on the road. Whenever they're on the road, because you won't be able to listen to Joe, right? And it won't be synced up and you won't have that option on your app, so you're going to have to listen to whoever MLS puts in that. Joe basically said, or they could just patch the away stadium into the truck and then you'd be all solved. He's like we did 15 years ago. Joe is the expert radio guy and knows all of these things. So you're not going to pull the wool over Joe Tutino's eyes. He's like, you can fix this easily. We can do this. I imagine they do it with other teams as well.
Well, as good as an announcer as Joe is, he's a technical guy. He was the guy that ran the radio stations down San Diego and did all that technical stuff. So he knows the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of this. Who is going to be his analyst? I guess with Kobe off doing Apple TV, he's going to be by himself, right? Joe will be alone.
Single booth right now. I don't know if eventually Christian Miles joins him up there, because Christian was obviously a co-host here and did a lot of play-by-play for the Galaxy whenever Joe would do TV.
What about you?
No, I'm busy. I'd like I like to sit up in the stands or sit up in the press box and drink my soda and just watch the game unfold in front of me. I'm a live soccer nut, so that's all I want. Just leave me right there. I mean, if Joe wants it, he'll never be able to talk because I never shut up. So I don't know if that's really, my place.
Well, speaking of Galaxy broadcasting alumni, people that used to work for him, Nikki K is in Arizona with the Dodgers right now.
Yeah, she was there last year too. I love how all of a sudden you pay attention after she's no longer covering the Galaxy. Like she was there last year. She did some of the Lakers stuff too. She's all around. So, if they ever do sideline reporters, which I think they're going to miss this year, Nikki should be there because she loves soccer. She dedicates herself to it and she works really hard at it. So I'm on Team Nikki over Team Panda for sure, 100%. You're on Team Nikki over Team Panda too.
Yes,
so
I am.
That's fine. So that's the Apple TV sort of side of this. I really think that the Apple TV thing is going to be good, at least in the short term, in the interim, until we sort of figure out what the bad parts of it are. There's going to be negative parts. But at least right now, I really like the product. I like sort of the crisp, clear picture. There were people who were sending me shots of like their TV going all scrambled. I would imagine that that's going to happen a little bit, but they were doing these tests because they are going live next weekend and there's no more testing after that. Is
there such a thing as too much content? I mean, they're going to do the post-game media conferences. They're going to have all kinds of shoulder programming during the week. If you have the Galaxy page on your Apple TV app, you're going to get all kinds of written content as well, statistics and stuff. Is there a danger that there is literally too much content?
Yes.
I know that for example, the Super Bowl, we're used to getting all this stuff for the Super Bowl, but we don't want it for the third game of the regular season when the Rams are playing, the Washington, whatever they are now.
Well, we know as reporters, and we're having this discussion right now, is how we cover the team afterwards in the press conferences, because the away coach is going to come and they want them to talk. And so the Galaxy are trying to figure out how to do that, because what you need to understand about soccer players or any professional athletes is if you're not there in front of them requesting that they answer your questions, they will leave and they will go. And a lot of times we miss players because they will leave and they will go. And so if you delay us by having us sit through an away coach, which by the way, nope, almost none of the press that's covering the LA Galaxy beat is going to talk to the away coach.
And there's no visiting writers. Very few teams in MLS have visiting writers, so it's going to be the PR guy just asking the coach a bunch of questions for Apple TV.
Yes, and that's what we expect to happen, but that delays everything as it goes. So we know we're going to have to change things. So yes, I think there could be too much content, but I think the Galaxy are going to be smart enough with it. I know how they're trying to do it. We'll see if that ends up happening.
But I mean for the fans too. I mean, can it just be so much that it overwhelms you for 34 games a year? Again, the Super Bowl, MLS Cup, I get it. One game, you want all those stats. But for every single game, it's one of those things where there is so much information. You miss the important information because there's just so
Sometimes-
much stuff floating around.
Yeah, sometimes. I don't think we're there yet, though, by the way. I mean, right now they're filling everything out. If you're a diehard, you want to listen to the post-game press conferences. If you're a diehard, you want to have all that information because you get the little nuggets of information that you're able to glean from all of that. So I think that they're playing that. Again, I like Apple TV. I think it's going to go well for them. Let's talk about Tyler Boyd, though. Tyler Boyd fully announced by the LA Galaxy today. I was driving, so I was late on the announcement. I saw it come through, and I'm like, not going to text and drive this one. This one's going to have to wait until I get home. Plus, it was, as Greg Vandy said, the worst kept secret in all of Major League Soccer. Tyler Boyd, non-TAM contract from what we know.
1 year.
Yeah, one single year, no options. And there's a lot of discussion about that, Kevin. Do you think
It's not even a year. It's 10 months.
Yeah, do you think Tyler Boyd asked for a 1-year contract? Do you think the LA Galaxy asked for a 1-year contract?
Well, your theory was that at his age that he wanted to prove himself so he could sign one more big deal, and this would be the way to do that. And rather than if he plays well enough to get that big deal, great. If he plays, solid, maybe the Galaxy give him another year. So I think he's trying to do it both ways. Smart.
I think that because he got relatively no playing time in Turkey, there's sort of this impression that maybe he can't play anymore, right? So far in the preseason, Tyler Boyd's looked really good in the limited amount of minutes we've seen. He's looked really good. I think he's going to come off the bench against LAFC and he's going to cause them problems, right? So that's how I expect them to use him in that opening game. And I think that in this particular case, he's going to use this year to get healthy, get a lot of minutes. I imagine he's possibly one of the starters whenever, depending on Douglas Costa, we'll talk a little bit about that too. Whenever that comes down with Tyler Boyd. So I think that this was a play on him because you would think the Galaxy would at least put an option year in there, right? And that they'd want the option year. And Tyler Boyd's not an idiot. And he's like, I don't want you guys to have the option. And so if I'm coming, it's 1 year and we'll see where we stand from there because I'm going to show you how much I can play for. Non-TAM deal, because usually targeted allocation money has to be announced whenever they make the announcement. And MLS goes over all of these press releases before they go out to make sure that they have the proper wording in them.
And if you mess up, you get suspended.
That's what I hear. So that's where I sort of see this going right now is that the Galaxy are sort of like, all right, we want you, so come play. And Tyler Boyd's like, this is my audition for the rest of MLS because this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my career. This is where I'm going to play. And if I play really well, then I will get that TAM contract next time, or maybe the DP contract. He's not going to get a DP, but I think a higher TAM project certainly there.
Well, here's my take on the Boyd thing. As we talked about earlier, there were really only 2 signings that had taken place up until say the last week. Now Tyler Boyd and then we have some other guys starting to filter in, and there's rumors going around. The Galaxy, if you go back to the playoff loss, they have 18 weeks to get ready for the opener. And Greg Vanny admitted last week that, hey, this is not a complete team. We knew when the schedule came out when we were going to play, and we're just not ready for that game. I'm not Greg Vanny, and I don't pretend to be Greg Vanny. He's won MLS Cups and Supporter Shields, and he's a great coach. That's why he's in that position. So I don't want to sound like I'm second-guessing him, but I'm just questioning, why would you not want to be ready for the opener? Now, I know last year he said the season starts with 10 games to go because of the playoffs. And by the way, the MLS will expected, I think, to announce a new playoff format this week and maybe as early as tomorrow. But the playoff format is, according to reporting in the Athletic, if that's true, it's supposed to be 9 teams. If you're not one of the top 9 teams in a 14-team conference, then you probably don't have a lot of business being out there anyways. The Galaxy will be one of those 9 teams. And once they get into the playoffs, they have a chance to make a long run just because of the personnel that they have. But and so I'm sure Greg's looking at that and saying, we really don't need to have our best team until October. They're not going to compete for a Supporters Shield, probably. I don't think the team is good enough to do that. But it's just the idea of starting the season and admitted, like, hey, we've had 18 weeks and we're just not ready. There's just something about that doesn't sit right with me. I know Greg wants to make the best signings. He doesn't want to panic. But and there were some things that happened out of his control. He didn't know Grandsir was going to stay back in France for personal reasons. He did trade Cabral, so he knew that was something he was probably thinking about. He didn't know he was going to lose Araujo even until the very end of the window. He said that came together pretty quickly at the end of the window. So there were some problems that he didn't anticipate. But again, still, the whole winter, you had 2 signings. None of both guys are not probably predicted to be starters. That seems like a lot of wasted time.
I bet you that Mavinga and memo start. Like for a lot of games. I think you're going to find that those are bigger signings than you think. The other part of that I would say is that when you look at where the replacements are in terms of those players, right? In terms of all the things that they sort of need, they are now we're going to talk about right back. So right back rumor, and Greg Vanny confirmed that they had talks with 20-year-old right back from Fluminense in Brazil. This is Lucas Caligari or Caligari. I have no idea how you say it. I think Greg probably said it, and I knew that was one of the reasons that he was very confident about how he said it, so I knew they probably had talks with him. This was as I started my question because it was the last questions. I said, hey, continuing with you giving all the secrets away after you talked about your Russell, I said, can we talk about Lucas Caligari? And he's been linked to the LA Galaxy. He said he's one of a list of people who they've been talking to. The reports out there now basically have this deal done. It's a loan with an option to buy. We'll see exactly where it all comes in terms of money, because I've seen a whole bunch of different things sort of thrown out here and there. But the 20-year-old right back who has not seen a lot of minutes and is a backup more with Fluminense from what I've been reading, is he had a really high ceiling and then he sort of filtered off a little bit here and there. With that saying, I think this could be a really good signing for the LA Galaxy. Quick, good dribbling ability, seems to be able to take tackles on the ground, all that fun stuff. I think there was some talk in the Discord that he's not a great winner of balls in the air. As an outside back, you probably don't have to be that guy. So I think that's less of an issue. And the way the LA Galaxy like to play with the ball on the ground, that probably helps them as well. So anyway, with Lucas Caligari, it looks like that is going to be the guy who's going to be replacing Julian Araujo. Now it really comes down to, with all the other pieces sort of there, is the young designated player. We expect that Caligari is going to be that U22 player. And then that means the LA Galaxy now have 3 U22 players, which means that if they're signing if they're signing a DP, it's probably a young DP to keep the 3 U22 players. And Greg Vanny has hinted at making sure it's a young designated player. Greg Vanny, in that same sentence where he talked about Lucas Caligari, also killed the Marcelo rumor, said he was not aware of any talks that the LA Galaxy have had with Marcelo. That would be left back, and one of probably the scariest positions right now for the LA Galaxy. I like Chase Gasper. He's still a backup to Raheem Edwards. Raheem Edwards has had a nightmare preseason so far. Maybe it's because the games don't count, and once they start counting, Raheem Edwards snaps into it, but there's been a lot of giveaways. So that Marcelo as a left back rumor doesn't seem to fit anything. Would have to be like a Max Tam sort of player. I don't see that happening, but I feel like the LA Galaxy, and I was told specifically, still have money to be spent. So the Marcelo rumor is dead, at least for now, with Greg Vanny saying that they haven't talked to anybody in that particular camp and haven't talked to Marcelo. Not that he was aware of. Obviously, it could be other people talking. But
when you talk about the Galaxy with money to spend, for all the heat that the front office and ownership have taken, most of it justified, they did spend $27 million. That was their payroll at the end of last season. It's a club record, second highest in MLS. And they got money back. But without Grandsir coming back and by trading Cabral, although they're paying part of Cabral's salary, they saved, I think, a little over $1.5 million. They got some money, not all of the money from the Julian Araujo transfer because of the way MLS handles it. So they do have some money to spend, and they haven't been shy about spending it. But what management has always told me is, just because a player is available and asking for a certain amount of money, we want that player, we're not going to pay that money. We're going to make sure the player is worth it first. So if there's somebody out there they want, the money's available, but I don't think they're going to spend like drunken sailors.
Here's the other fun thing that's sort of happening right now. The Isco rumor is alive again, and I've been seeing reports of it all day. This is interesting because Isco would definitely have to come as a designated player, but does not qualify, obviously, as a young designated player. So there could be, and with Costa not playing, and Costa suddenly not showing, and maybe there's a calf issue, maybe there's not a calf issue. With him not playing, there could still be a buyout by the LA Galaxy of Douglas Costa in order to open up a designated player spot, and that could be Isco. I don't love the fit. I think I can understand it if the LA Galaxy go out and get a young designated player as a winger, and then you have Tyler Boyd, and you have Memo Rodriguez, and you have Efrain Alvarez, and you don't have Douglas Costa anymore, and Isco can sort of sit in the middle as well and play a little bit of that. Maybe he inverts off the side like Costa does. Really interesting, but the fact it's not dead and that it keeps popping up is one of those things that makes me a little bit nervous. just in terms of how this should go. By the way, I want to get to some super chats before we completely shut everything down. I think I said, Gary, thank you for the $10 super chat. Appreciate that. Julios gave us a $2 super chat, says Efrain should distribute some of his weight to Ricky Puig, right? Because Ricky needs to bulk up a little bit, right? That's not a bad call.
Ricky, one of the few guys, maybe the only guy in MLS that tucks his shirt in.
Yeah. Herb, by the way, said, any updates on the shirt you're wearing? I am wearing the Corner of the Galaxy jersey. I've been asking. I will get back with that. I will try to make that happen this year as well. So it's a lot of work to try to coordinate all this stuff, but it is what it is, and I want to make sure if you guys want these, we can get you one. And
how about the shirt I'm wearing?
Nobody wants that.
This is honor of Julian Araujo.
Nobody wants that shirt. You're gonna if you tried to switch shirts with anybody right now, they would burn it. Herb, by the way, if we do end up getting these, I'm buying yours, Herb. So you're all set. I will make sure that is the case. You've done more than enough. So we'll make sure that we get you one, whenever that comes out. Those are the rumors. This is sort of where the LA Galaxy sit. They are not as bad as everybody is making them to be. I will tell you right now. I watched them play now multiple games in the preseason. I've seen them play against a Toronto side that should be okay. Should be a good. I don't think that they were playing great in that. By the way, Victor Vasquez was there, was jogging before the game, said hi to some of the guys. Brugman came up and gave him a huge hug whenever he saw him. I believe he's either hurt or they weren't going to use him in the game because I think he did some training beforehand and then sat on the bench or sat in the stands or wherever he went for that and was able. I watched him and Greg Vanney walk off the field together, talking like as they always do about different things. So. That's sort of that game. I don't think the LA Galaxy are as bad. I don't know what to make of this first game because I think the Galaxy will be competitive. I think they will. I don't know that they're going to have all the pieces. Greg Vanney said it, and I'm in agreement with him. Greg's argument, Kevin, was that he didn't want to make decisions for one game whenever there's 34 games or 33 games after that first game, right? And so he's trying to make decisions for the whole season. He doesn't want to give away any points. And as the chat room was talking about, there's a ton of early games because everything is clustered together before you get to Leagues Cup, where there's that break for a month.
And also the Gold Cup. I guess where I would push back in my point sort of about, yes, these guys may be valuable offseason signings, but they're not the typical offseason signings we've seen with the Galaxy. The Galaxy have I'm going to just say Greg's probably absolutely right. And with the club and whatever that he has, this is the best strategy. Just get to the playoffs and make a run there. That just doesn't feel like the Galaxy. This is a club with big ambitions that goes into every season playing for Supporter Shield.
Yeah, I disagree with it. Greg said you just have to make the playoffs, and that's where he's going to run.
No, I'm not saying that he said that, but I'm saying that is the reality.
I don't think that's the reality. I think the LA Galaxy.
This is the team that going to the Supporter Shield.
No, I don't know who they're going to sign yet. So whenever they get that young DP in there, it's not out of the question. I don't think the LA Galaxy are outside of the top 3 in the Western Conference, and that's even as they sit right now. There's a good cohesiveness. They have a lot of stuff that I think works for them. They dominated against Portland. I know they lost that game 4-1, but that was switches in the second half and some other things that happened in that. Dominated against Portland. They dominated for stretches against Toronto already. You can say whatever you want that these are preseason games and they don't mean anything, but you're seeing that Vanney's way of playing is showing on the field already. And so when they sign the next, like if Douglas Costa goes out and they bring in Isco, I have to think that that's an upgrade. I don't care if Isco plays 17 games instead of, the 14 games that Douglas Costa sort of put together. I have to think that's an upgrade. So I think that they're getting that right. What I'm seeing from Memo Rodriguez is that he could be along with Tyler Boyd, and even if it's platoon, that they could be better than Grand Sur. Efrain Alvarez with the way he's playing, and yes, it's preseason, and I understand that before. I see a lot of positives and changes in his game that you have not seen from him before. So you have Puig, you have Brugman. They're doing the same thing that they were already doing. So I think there's a lot of sky is falling because a lot of these pieces are coming in a little bit late, but the team that's on the field is not horrible. I think that's where everybody needs to understand. It's not horrible. It's not the sky is falling. This team can be competitive, and they can be competitive for the first 5-6 games.
Well, Vanney is the only coach since Bruce Arena that's had consecutive winning seasons with the Galaxy, which is bizarre stat. But it's interesting. The first year, Greg brought a lot of those guys in late, if you remember, or brought them in during the season, and they played well. And then they had that horrible stretch in October and September. Remember where they did winless for so many games. And then contrast that with last year, where, again, he brought in guys late in the season, Puig, Bergman, Caceres, and then they went crazy at the same time where they had the losing streak the year before.
Yep.
So it's like this is kind of the rubber match of this. How's this team going to play? Maybe this team is hot from the start and just goes all the way through. But it is strange when you look at the roster composition and the way Greg built the teams. That one year they just went south in August, and the next year they took off.
Yeah, I mean I think if you're going to look at what the downfall of the Galaxy could be, is that there won't be anything in the summer, or if there will be, it'll have to be internal to the league. Maybe that's what saves the Galaxy seasons. They're able to make an intra-league transfer that makes a lot of sense for them and trade somebody away and get somebody else in, or bring somebody else in and move somebody down. There's ways, and I think the Galaxy are trying to stay flexible even for that summer, knowing that there isn't really a summer for them, but there could be.
Well, they need to
prepare for that.
Depth is going to be so important this year.
Yeah, it is. Or you're just not going to, you know what? Or you're not going to play. Vanny already said it, and he already hinted at it. He said, we're going to responsibly be as competitive in those tournaments as we can be. Responsibly. Everybody knows that the focus is on the league. Depending on how you play in the Leagues Cup and how you make it through the first couple rounds and the first couple games, maybe that turns into a focus, right? It's kind of like the Open Cup. You make it through a couple games, and all of a sudden that can be a focus because it's a way to get through. So, but there may be tournaments where the Galaxy are like, all right, G2 guys or, MLS Next Pro guys, you guys take it over, have fun, go out there and run it out, because we're not going to waste our guys. We're not going to worry about that. There's too many games, and we have something that's too important. But that's sort of where I sit. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on leading up to this week. There's press conferences. There's the big MLS Media Day, I think, on Friday, right, Kevin? Is that what you're going to that?
Yes. I don't know if I'll be able to go to that because I have a lot of stories I need to write, and I'm not getting the interviews I need. So we'll see how that comes together.
Okay, I understand. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I told you I will be not at this game. I'll be out of town, but I'll be watching it on Apple TV, and I'll be covering it from the laptop as allowed. So look for that. But we will have a show on Thursday night that will get you ready for this game. So that's where we sit. Galaxy roster maybe finally coming to almost a form that now seems to be competitive, but we have to see how that sort of plays out on Saturday. So should be interesting.
So a show on Thursday. When do you travel to Colorado?
Friday morning.
Oh, you're gonna get snowed in.
I know.
You probably won't be able to land.
No, it'll be fine. It's supposed to be like sunny and sunshine there. It's gonna be good. I'm not worried at all. Plus, I've been stuck there before, so it doesn't really bother me. I've played that game before. All right. Anything else? You good?
I had nothing when we started.
Newsletter. You have a newsletter coming out?
My newsletter?
Well,
there was a newsletter which come out tomorrow. Anyone who reads that, thank you. It is the penultimate LA Times soccer newsletter. The newsletter will be sunlighted next week. They wanted me actually to stop writing it in January, but I argued that I wanted to stay through the first El Tráfico of the season, the game at the Rose Bowl. I thought would be a pretty newsworthy event. So we're going to do 2 more soccer newsletters, and then that ends.
No mas. 22,000 people on your list, and you're just going to leave them hanging,
22,000 subscribers, yeah. And 22,000 plus subscribers to the soccer newsletter. It was a great event. When it started in the aftermath of the Russia World Cup, they asked me to do it. I hated it. It was just too much work. It's a lot of work. It's 3,000 words. It's way too long. But it gave me a chance to do actually feature-length stories on a lot of different things, on UCLA women's soccer, on Orange County Soccer Club, and then the U.S. national team, the other things. But rather than just a note or a paragraph on UCLA women's soccer, we could write a full feature story and include it in the newsletter. That all goes away. There will be a soccer column in the daily newspaper, but
right.
The space constraints means it's going to be very short. And also, the big thing for you is now we have no place to attach the link to the pod, which is always at the bottom of the newsletter.
Where were those 22,000 people going to go to get the podcast? Corner of the Galaxy is of course one place they could go. And just subscribe, and then you never have to get the link again from any newsletter or anything else. I would remind everybody, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to the podcast, like all that fun stuff, smash that like button. Got to get those YouTube likes in. But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to see it go. I know Larry won't be maybe sorry to see it go, but that's Larry.
You know what I was thinking? I don't know how many people know this. I know you guys probably can't fathom this, but I made some errors. And I called Douglas Costa. I think Diego
Costa.
Yeah, and Larry was all over me about that. So I said, okay, well then why don't you help me? It's not getting edited in the office. Why don't you help me? And so Larry has been sort of the below the scenes editor of that. He edits the column before I turn it in, finds the mistakes. The interesting thing about that is my first job in journalism was at the San Gabriel Valley Tribune in 1977. Larry was an editor at the Tribune. So when I first started writing 46 years ago, Larry edited my stuff. And now in retirement, he's still editing my copy 46 years later.
Yeah, I know, and at least he's getting paid less this time. That's a good
Yeah.
thing. He says between you and me that we owe him like 100 lunches.
Yeah, he told me I owe him 72 fat burgers, which I guess
You should deliver all those at the same time. That's what I think. But yeah,
it's like that guy from Popeye.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was gonna say, no, Jeff Carlisle came out with an article that I got to see. I think just
Fantastic
before.
article.
Yeah, really good. And Jeff from ESPN does a great job. But anyway, in it was mentioned that Klein basically told everybody he got a multi-year extension. So if we haven't said that and you haven't seen it, that's from so far away.
Well, I want to remark on that because when we talk about that, it's like when Klein came back, I think I might have had my original story was a multi-year contract too, although I didn't know how many years. His first 2 contracts were 5 years.
Right.
Okay. He set, according to Klein, he had set records for ticket revenue and sponsorship revenue, and that a lot of that's the Herbalife renewal. That's his job as president. He's on the business side, so he did what he was supposed to do. Why would he accept anything less than a 5-year contract? Now, it may not be a 5-year contract. There maybe they've decided since he's part of the committee for the 2026 World Cup in 2026, he's going to be too busy to do the Galaxy and the World Cup. I don't know what the World Cup would entail for him, so maybe it's a 3-year contract. But I don't see any way that Chris Klein ever went into those negotiations thinking, I just gave you record amounts of revenue, which is my job. Just give me 1 year. No, I mean, I think it was always thought of as a multi-year contract.
It's just confirmation, right? And so it's like one of those things is like confirmation on an unknown thing, but that's longer than a year.
I was very jealous of that article. It was an incredible article that Jeff did. And the interesting note about Jovan Kurowski, that people that used to work for the Galaxy said they couldn't figure out what he does.
Yeah, or that he does whatever he wants, I think was the quote, right? He does whatever he wants. So again, you can go read it, ESPN.com, Jeff Carlisle there. So thank you in the chat room for reminding me of that thing. Okay, we're done. That's it. We're wrapping it up. It was a long one. I knew it was going to be, so I'm not surprised. We actually had stuff to talk about. Yeah, I know. 90 minutes.
An hour and a half. Yeah.
It was one of those things. All right.
That's as long as the game.
Yeah.
We're in stoppage time right now.
Yeah, it was longer than the event at the theater too, by 3 times.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's always a good thing. All right. If you are looking for me, I would like to hit the button and then have things work. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay.
There it goes.
There it goes. Okay. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, of course, at Galaxy Podcast. Mr. Kevin Baxter at KBaxter11, LATimes.com. I would say subscribe to his newsletter. You know what? Go ahead and do it anyway.
One more time.
Yeah, you get it for one more time. Go subscribe to his newsletter. LATimes.com is where you can find him. All right. I think that about does it. Show coming up on Thursday. We'll get you ready for El Tráfico. What? The season is upon us. Boys, girls, we are ready to start the 2023 season, even if the Galaxy maybe aren't 100% ready there. All right, for Mr. Kevin, the Panda, Baxter, I'm Josh, Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.